Hello everyone, welcome to Stencil Month Day 4. Today I'm going to be playing with some products from the latest Simon Says Stamp card kit, and a big thanks to Simon for allowing me to share this video here for Stencil Month. Today I'm going to be playing with the stamp set that comes in the May 2024 card kit. When I first saw this stamp set, it has a lot of really great individual images, and I kind of honed in on that solid circle, which I think is probably meant to be a sun, but I thought it would be really cool to kind of use it in a different way and stamp that solid circle as if it was a ring of color, and then watercolor or add water to the stamped ring and bring the color into the center to create balloons. So I'm using a very small acrylic block so that I have that kind of space around the stamp image to rock it into the ink pad. So you'll notice here I'm first I'm placing my greeting on my watercolor paper so that I can get the spacing right. Then I'm taking my circle stamp and I'm going to tip it and angle it and only add ink to the outer edges of my circle. Then I'm stamping it. And once I have that stamped, I'm going to grab my damp paintbrush and bring it to that stamp circle and kind of work the color away from the edges. And this is going to fill in that area and bring a lot of that color into the center. I'm going to leave a pretty good portion in that kind of right side of the top of the balloon. I'm going to leave that free of any color so that it will look like a highlight. And then as I hit this balloon with my heat tool, I realized that there was some shimmer in my cup of water left behind from some previous painting. So there is not actually shimmer in the inks. Instead, I just had shimmer in my cup of water. So it doesn't really show too much, but I noticed on camera while I was editing this video that you could see it. I then came in with the color Lemonade. That first color was Taffy, this is Lemonade, and now I'm going to stamp with the color Iris. You can see that I rock that stamp just so that the edges of the circle pick up ink, and then I'm stamping it down onto my watercolor paper. By the way, this is Strathmore pre-cut 5x7 watercolor paper, and I've taped it to a hardboard so that as it dries, it will be very flat. All right, so I'm just bringing in that color, and I also realized that some of these ink colors kind of spread the ink more than others when they were wet, so I did end up smushing the ink pads onto a slick surface. I just have this palette here from Art Impressions, and I picked up a little extra ink on my brush to add more color. I'm going to overlap this blue color, this is Cadet, right over the purple shade. I think those colors work really well together. You can see how picking up just a little extra ink kind of smushed onto that palette really works well. My teal color is Tropic, and I'm going to stamp that and then bring in that color as well. I'm going to end up smushing that ink pad down to get a little more color, just since it didn't spread too much when I started painting. My last color is Sherbet. It's this nice orange, and I did overlap the orange over blue, and when they kind of overlapped, they started to create a little bit of mud, so I tried to avoid that area as much as possible and just bring in that orange on the outer edges. So the balloons are almost finished. I decided that since I was going to make this a happy birthday card, having sort of some kind of colorful splatter onto this balloon scene would look like confetti. It would look a little more party-ish and joyful, so I splattered on some of that taffy color and also the iris color. And the iris, I wanted to not have it be quite so dark, so I did kind of splotch up or pick up some of that color with the paper towel. I then used the A7 layers dies from Waffle Flower just to trim this down so that I could have it on a 5x7 card and have quite a bit of space around the outside. I put the watercolor piece inside my MISTI, and then I stamped the happy birthday greeting from the stamp set. I prepped the area with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped the greeting in clear embossing ink from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to actually apply some gold embossing powder to the greeting itself, and I'm using the gilded color from Brutus Monroe. It's kind of my favorite gold. I've been using it for years and years. So I'll tap off the excess powder and then hit that with my heat tool and heat it until the embossing powder is smooth and melted. I also decided to add a little bit of that clear embossing ink to the outer edges of my watercolor panel. I'm just rubbing that ink right along the edge to add some of that clear embossing ink just to the edge. And then I dipped each edge into my container of embossing powder. If you don't have your embossing powder in a container like this, you could definitely just dump it out onto a piece of scratch paper and then funnel that paper back into the jar. It works great. I heat set that, and then I'm left with this really organic looking gold border on my watercolor paper. I love to add little accents like this. It works really, really well. So I'm going to finish the balloons off by drawing on some strings. So I'm using a 0.1 Copic multiliner. It's a very thin, fine pointed marker, and I'm just kind of really freely drawing on these strings. Now, if you wanted to recreate this and make your own version, you could definitely use a pencil to draw these strings on first and then go back over it with a black marker. But I kind of wanted a very whimsical freeform look to these, so I decided to just go with whatever I drew. For the background of my card, I'm using the I Like Small Dots stencil, and this is where I'm going to do a little bit of kind of custom colors for my stenciling. I'm first attaching or temporarily adhering the stencil to the piece of lavender cardstock from the back. And then I'm going to take one of my favorite glitter pastes. This is Fairy Dust from Lawn Fawn. It's a very nice clear paste. It actually goes on a little bit translucent, but once it's dry, it's completely clear with more of a blue toned glitter. So I'm going to take my re-inker for the color Iris. That's the purple shade that I use for my balloons. And I'm putting, I think I did about 3 drops of this re-inker. I probably could have gotten away with just 2. It's a very, very strong pigment. But I just mixed this up into that Fairy Dust stencil paste from Lawn Fawn until I had a nice smooth paste to work with. I had to mix this quite a bit. I wasn't too worried about it drying out too much because adding the re-inker added fluid and gave a little bit more moisture to it. And then I smeared it over my stencil. In hindsight, I think I should have mixed up a little bit more of this paste because I really had to scrape it to move it around to other areas before I was running out. I used every single bit of this stencil paste. In fact, you could argue that I mixed up the perfect amount because I had none left over and it did coat everything that I wanted it to coat. Basically, I'm just doing kind of a tone on tone effect with a darker purple dot over that lavender cardstock. That cardstock's from Simus Stamp, by the way. So after I scraped off all of the excess and got everything really flat, I then removed the stencil and I cleaned off that stencil right away in a sink with a little bit of soapy water. And then I set this aside to dry. And it took a little bit of time to dry. In fact, I helped it along using my heat tool just so I could continue on with my card. So now I'm going to take that same color of ink, Iris, and with a large blending tool, I'm going to bring in this color on the outer edges of my cardstock. This gives it a really cool kind of depth on those edges. And where that stencil paste is, it sort of rejects any of the ink that I'm blending on. Now, my ink pad was getting a little dry, and I already had my re-inker out, so I decided to just go ahead and re-ink it. And you can tell it's ready to be re-inked for sure when the squiggle of ink you put on immediately absorbs into the ink pad. And then I was able to get a little more color applying down when I bring my brush over, and it's made it a whole lot easier to get a very intense color on those edges. I then adhered my stenciled background to the front of my card using some Tombow Extreme adhesive. Just put that right down onto a prepared 5x7 card base. So the only thing left to do is really to assemble my card. So I've put the background on, and now I'm going to put on that watercolor piece. I used some foam tape from Simon on the back just to pop it up, and then adhered that down to the card. And just a little tip, if you have really warped watercolor paper after working on a watercolor painting and you want to put it on your card, you might consider using foam adhesive because it's a little more forgiving and it really can stick down to all those warped edges. So here's the finished card. I love the shiny gold embossing powder and also the glitter on that glitter paste. And I love how I can't even tell exactly what stamp set it's from. It was a very different way to use those images. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder that everything I've used today is listed down below in the video description. And thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.